I believe all of you already know I volunteered to serve in the United States Army. That, in and of itself, should qualify for the prerequisite of this class, but if it doesn't, I also continue my service to the military by assisting my fellow veterans. I established the International Chapter of Student Veterans of America on the campus of ITT Tech in Dunmore. I still serve that chapter as an advisor. A little more than a year ago, because of some predatory practices of for-profit schools, our charter was revoked for about 10 hours. It only lasted 10 hours because that's how long it took me to find out about it. I went straight to the press and Mike Dakduke, the executive director of the SVA. After my expletive threats, we were nearly immediately reinstated. Because of my ability to argue, Mike selected me as the SVA national spokesperson of for-profit schools. I was interviewed and quoted by USA Today and CNN Money. I designed the SVA Regalia Medal and sell them nationally to student veterans. 100% of all the profit gets returned in the form of scholarships. The SVA certified my volunteer hours, and last year I earned the Gold Presidential Volunteer Service Award. Currently, I am very active on Tobyhanna Army Depot's Veterans Council. Last week, we had officer nominations, and I was nominated for every position. On the 26th, I'll find out if I'm the president or the vice president of that organization. But these accomplishments mean absolutely nothing. They are just things I like to do. You may have noticed I'm refusing to give this speech on volunteerism in the traditional way out of protest. This is simply because I don't agree with it. This assignment is probably one of the stupidest I've seen. First off, what does volunteer service have to do with a speech class? Secondly, how can Keystone force the students to perform 5 hours of volunteer service? The moment you force someone to do something, it becomes involuntary. This is what people refer to as a paradox, and I hate paradoxes. So I am going to attempt to justify this assignment. As I said before, this is a speech class. Speech, or speaking, is not an involuntary action. It's a voluntary one. So what does this mean? Well, we're in college, so let's do the math. Up to this point, we've had 11 weekender classes, averaging about 2 hours each. If any student in here only attended half of those classes, they would have volunteered for 11 hours. That's twice the required prerequisite. Let's face it, volunteering is choosing to give of yourself, and every one of you in here has done that by speaking and sharing. Every time you say something, you volunteer. You volunteer to give advice, you volunteer to teach, you volunteer your opinion, and you volunteer your time. Simply by attending this class, you've already volunteered your time. Through introduction, you volunteered to share of yourself. When you volunteered information, you taught others. When you volunteered to demonstrate, you encouraged your peers. When you volunteered to persuade, you offered a new perspective. So really, what is the point of this speech? As our voluntary actions have already been satisfied. In light of the popularity of music in my last speech, I figured I'd use it to share of myself and offer you some advice.
Wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have been proved by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no basis more reliable than my own meandering experience. I will dispense this advice now. Enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. Oh, never mind. You will not understand the power and beauty of your youth until they've faded. But trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at photos of yourself and recall in a way you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how fabulous you really looked. You are not as fat as you imagine. Don't worry about the future, or worry but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. The real troubles in your life are apt to be things that never crossed your worried mind, the kind that blindsides you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. Do one thing every day that scares you. Sing. Don't be reckless with other people's hearts. Don't put up with people who are reckless with yours. Floss. Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, and in the end, it's only with yourself. Remember compliments you receive. Forget the insults. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. Keep your old love letters. Throw away your old bank statements. Stretch. Don't feel guilty if you don't know what you want to do with your life. The most interesting people I know didn't know at 22 what they wanted to do with their lives. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. Get plenty of calcium. Be kind to your knees. You'll miss them when they're gone. Maybe you'll marry, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have children, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll divorce at 40. Maybe you'll dance the funky chicken on your 75th wedding anniversary. Whatever you do, don't congratulate yourself too much, or berate yourself either. Your choices are half chance. So are everybody else's. Enjoy your body. Use it every way you can. Don't be afraid of it, or what other people think of it. It's the greatest instrument you'll ever own. Dance. Even if you have nowhere to do it but in your own living room. Read the directions, even if you don't follow them. Do not read beauty magazines. They will only make you feel ugly. Get to know your parents. You never know when they'll be gone for good. Be nice to your siblings. They're your best link to your past and the people most likely to stick with you in the future. Understand that friends come and go, but with a precious few, you should hold on. Work hard to bridge the gaps in geography and lifestyle, because the older you get, the more you need the people you knew when you were young. Live in New York City once, but leave before it makes you hard. Live in Northern California once, but leave before it makes you soft. Travel. Accept certain inalienable truths. Prices will rise, politicians will philander, you too will get old. And when you do, you'll fantasize that when you were young, prices were reasonable, politicians were noble, and children respected their elders. Respect your elders. Don't expect anyone else to support you. Maybe you have a trust fund, maybe you'll have a wealthy spouse. You never know when either one might run out. Don't mess too much with your hair, or by the time you're 40, it will look 85. Be careful whose advice you buy, but be patient with those who supply it. Advice is a form of nostalgia. Dispensing it is a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's worth. But trust me on the sunscreen.
Then I thought I'd continue with music, tell you a story, and teach you a new perspective through demonstration.
Don't worry, Brian. Those goosebumps will go away in about 20 minutes. Stewie, that is the worst thing I have ever seen, ever.